Hello everybody, I am Ben from Team Panic. It is time to talk about how my ant-weight noisy hammer robot Squeak performed at ARC's June meet. And we're just going to jump straight on into the fights. There wasn't too much that changed on Squeak between the last event and this one. So our first fight up is against Whipsnake, an extension robot? I really like fighting Whipsnake. Whipsnake is such an interesting design and it is so hard to do anything about. Partway through that fight, you can see me just stop firing the hammer entirely. A, because I'm not getting good squeaks because he's too tall, and B, because I am just concentrating on the driving problem that is trying to get Whipsnake 37 trillion down the pits. It is just very difficult to do. I got a couple of really good shoves on him that would have got anybody else in a really bad position, but because of his extension mechanism and how much power that thing has, he just is able to like zoop back out of the pit every time. He's just so fun to fight. I love seeing him at events with that robot, and I just really enjoy fighting it. So that was good fun. Obviously, a little bit sad that we don't get as good a Squeak out of Squeak when we fight Whipsnake. I think I've got a solution to that involving changing over the bellows, but that is something we'll deal with much later on, probably after the next big event, I would suggest. Although, I don't know, we'll see. It might come sooner than that. Anyway, this fight went the full 3 minutes because I was just unable to do anything about Whip Snake's extension mechanism, and despite getting him very close to being in the pit multiple times, he just extended his way back on out of there. And so we both survived for the full 3 minutes, so that was indeed a draw. Up next, we have a robot called Batty, which is a plastic drum spinner. So Batty is from the same team that destroyed the dustpan on the old version of SQUEAK, the green version of SQUEAK, and I was a touch worried about that in this fight, and the first couple of exchanges I was like, oh, maybe I didn't need to be worried because I got under Batty's drum quite well and managed to keep the dustpan totally fine. However, that did not last very long. It was 2 or 3 exchanges, maybe 4 in, that Batty finally lifted the dustpan up and took some chips out. And if you watch for it again, you can actually see little pieces of black plastic come flying out from the contact point, which is my dustpan here getting destroyed. And it got really badly destroyed in this fight. I mean, it is printed very, very thin. There is less than 1 millimeter of material at the front here, so it is an easy thing for a plastic robot to break. So these guys, they're kind of the high end of destruction that you could have in a plastic non-destructive class, but it's still definitely within inside the rules, I reckon. And yeah, you can see we got some really, really bad destruction on the actual scoop up here. But I couldn't actually let that get to me. I just had to keep the fight going. And with the scoop being destroyed in every front-on interaction, I had to do as much as I could to avoid the weapon and get side-on and around the back. There was, of course, a time where I managed to stack them up against the wall. I was hoping that that would stop the drum. It just didn't, which kudos to them. That's a very impressive thing for the drum to not stop when basically the entire robot's weight is on top of it. So that was very, very impressive. I was also then hoping that if I couldn't do that, then maybe they'd fall over upside down when they fell back onto their wheels. And, you know, that would make driving with them a little bit more difficult. Didn't get that either, so I had to continue on the fight as was and just do everything I could again to stay away from that weapon. And we didn't really do a perfect job of that. We definitely got beat up quite considerably by Batty here. But of course, in the end, did manage to get them down the pit to win that fight. And then the next fight up was pretty soon after this against Flipping Awesome, a green flipping robot. So in this fight, we both had torn up front wedges. I had not yet managed to get some acetate onto the robot because it was very soon after the Batty fight. But that was fine because his flipping arm had also been through a number of fights in the Plastic League and gone up against other robots like Batty and had taken significant damage as well. So the low ground game was more who was getting contact on the good points of their destroyed wedges / dustpans here. Which made that very interesting because there was no real guaranteed way to know who was going to win a front-on exchange. The interesting thing though is that Flipping Awesome is practically the anti-Squeak here. Every time he lifted his flipper up, he was stopping the hammer from making any sound at all, which is just annoying. Like, I'm here to make sound off of my opponents, so him being able to nullify the Squeak by lifting the flipper was, yeah, very annoying in a lot of different ways. Of course, he did get us over onto our side at one point, and yeah, that is fine actually. With the way everything works in the geometry, we can drive on our side, and as long as we keep one wheel working, we can definitely keep driving, and then, yeah, we managed to get back onto our wheels there, no problem. And of course, in the end, we managed to get him down the pit. And that was actually it for our round robin. There were only 4 robots in each round robin group. There were just more round robin groups this time around. And that means we're actually heading on through to the finals because we got a draw and 2 wins, which is definitely enough to make it on through. And our first fight up in the finals is up against a robot called Beast Boy. This is a green wedge with articulating wedgelets. Oh, and those wedgelets get really low to the ground. I was having trouble getting onto him despite having put on a fresh sheet of acetate onto the mangled up front section of my drum. The acetate should have got under him quite easily, but going into a head-on collision with him, again, much like in the last fight, there wasn't a clear winner on that one, so I needed to make sure I was targeting sides and back to get a good kind of push on him and get him in a spot where I could hit him with the hammer. I mean, I could hit him with the hammer when I'm up on top of him as well. The robot does actually hit basically through the dustpan, and especially with the dustpan eaten away as it was in this fight, I can definitely get a squeak on him in that position, but it's a lot better to have somebody in the dustpan and get the squeak on them that way. And yeah, sometimes we're not getting in underneath him. Of course, the thing with articulating wedgelets like that is that if you come in from a side, you can get under them that way a little bit as well, I found. So that was kind of interesting. One thing I found here too is there was a couple of times I had him pinned up against the wall, and one of them I'd thrown the hammer over and had left it there, and then before backing up I threw the hammer back, and now I'm actually wondering how well Squeak would work as a clamp and hold mechanism where I throw the hammer, get the squeak, and then hold the hammer arm down and drive away with somebody underneath the hammer to kind of, try and get them in the pit and the like, because especially in that particular case, he was up on Squeak and his wheels were in the air and the hammer was over top of him, so he should have stayed in that position. Maybe. It's something for me to think about as I drive Squeak in its next iterations and its next sets of fights at some point in the future. The other thing, of course, I got him stacked up. That is another thing that Squeak does quite well. If something gets high enough, you can use the kind of bottom of the hammer arm to stack them against the wall, which I've done it twice in this particular event and nothing has really come out of it either of those times. But, you know, look, maybe one day we'll fight a robot where we can stack them against the wall and we'll stack them with a hammer robot accidentally. I mean, look, I've got other robots that are designed to do stacking like that, and I'm doing it with a hammer robot instead. So apparently that is what we're doing today. Yeah, but it was a fun fight, this one. And we did eventually, of course, get him down the pit. Which means we move on to the next fight and the semi-finals. And this time we are up against Double Dozer. Oh man, this fight was just crazy. Double Dozer is very fast and very aggressive and very well driven and very low to the ground. That's a lot of varies, but that is basically that robot to a T. And I feel like this fight showed off its best qualities because it was just very, very hard to pin down. It was winning every single head-on collision, despite the fact we were both running acetate. Their acetate, obviously the angle is better or something, I don't really know, but anytime we went face to face, they were under me every single time. And then they've got nice little like triangles on the robot that stop the robot, like stop my robot from going over top of them like a jump, and kind of keep you there so they can control you wherever they want. And when I was getting underneath them, it didn't take them very long in most cases to break out of that and reverse it back on me and start pushing me around all over again. So this one was a difficult fight and it was a lot of fun. I enjoy really solid driving fights like this. It's just interesting when you're going up against a driver who is driving very quickly and very aggressively and nailing most of their shots. I mean, it does mean that when you have an opening, you absolutely have to take it, which is why I slammed them into that corner so hard and kept them there as long as I possibly could. I was actually aiming to try and jam the acetate in under the sidewall there. It is a win condition that I've got against Double Dozer in the past. And look, he was driving circles around me in this particular fight, so I was going to take any win that I could possibly get my hands on. But in this particular case, it did not work out for me. And yeah, they got back out of there and then managed to get me in the pits. Which means rather than moving on into the first and second place playoff, we are moving on into the third place playoff. And in this one, we're versing Run For It, my own design driven by Chris, the guy who provided all of the footage for last week's video and also for the upcoming Rumble footage. So despite only having been in the sport for a couple of months, Chris is driving particularly well, and he has driven Run For It very well for the last couple of events, and I think won third at both of the last couple of events because, of course, he obviously won this fight. And while there was a little bit of like both of us getting under each other at various points here, Run For It was designed to have more traction than everything else in the field, and it very much does have more traction than everything else in the field. The only chance that I had against it was breaking that traction. I did that a couple of times. I got that nice long push on him over into the corner. Would have been a little bit better if I'd got him into the pit in that case, because of course, as soon as he was out of that corner, he reversaled on me, got onto or underneath me or something, and just overpowered my drive. Well, overpowered the traction given by the wheels that I have, and just straight into the pit. So yes, Chris takes the third place. I take the fourth place with SQUEAK. And yeah, we've actually taken more damage in this particular event than we did in the last one. I'm probably going to have to reconsider the chassis a little bit. The dustpan up the front here is so thin because I was running out of weight in the robot. I'm thinking I might need a slight chassis redesign, or maybe even a material change to get the weight back in again so that I can maybe put a stronger front in, or interchangeable fronts. That would be nice if I could have a dustpan that I could swap in and out without somehow destroying its contact point to the ground. I don't know, I'll have to think on that. I think maybe the next version of SQUEAK will be this with some speed holes or something, just a very minor change, and then we might look at changing SQUEAK's dustpan moving further into the future, definitely after Havoc, I think. Because yeah, I don't really have time to do that between now and Havoc. There's lots and lots of things coming between now and Havoc. Anyway, we're not done with fights yet. We have one more thing to do, and that is the all-in ant weight rumble.
3, 2, 1, go! Okay, no, bad idea. Hey, I don't know. No. Oh, I'm flipping over. That's not good. Hello. Oh. I wasn't expecting to drive it. It is the corner of chaos. Can I join? Hello, I'm here. Oh my god. I don't like being on top of the spinner necessarily.
Oh no.
Oh no, there's a wheel.
That's not like this.
I'm gonna try that wheel.
I fully expected the spinner to fall over when I did that. Like to go upside down, but it did not. Is there somebody? Yeah, there is. Oh, there's a wheel behind me. Okay, I understand now.
Who's pushing who? Not sure.
Everyone.
It's a bit of a chain of wheels going on there.
Uh-oh. I don't want to be with these three. Oh, I see. My wheelie bar has been removed. That's not fun.
All of the wheels.
My life harder.
2 minutes remaining.
There's a pile of green and a bit red. They're stacking quite nicely.
Come on.
Come back here and avoid it as well. This is very nice. It actually is.
Aha! Go in.
Aggression.
No.
45 seconds remaining.
I am corkscrewing people. I'm corkscrewing people.
30 seconds remaining.
Run for it, it's going. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to
Alright, almost at the end. Count with me. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I've said it before and I'll say it again, I really enjoy a rumble. And also, rumbles show you where you take damage in a robot or give you the damage. I should say alternatively, give you damage in a robot that you would never get before. So we've actually taken a shot to the hammer itself. So there's a little bit of a chip out of the actual cast ABS that's up here, which is interesting. I didn't think it would chip out quite the way it did. So maybe this hammerhead is not ABS and is in fact a PLA or something. I don't know, but I do know that it chipped and shattered. So I'll need to consider that if I actually ever put a bellows back on this end, that we need to seal that up again a little bit. I also, partway through, lost my little stabilizer off the back. This was just a little foot that kind of helped the robot to not overbalance like this. And that made driving and squeaking and everything very hard from that point on. And it was basically all I could do to just stay alive to the very end of the fight and technically get the draw. But I mean, rumbles are never really about who's left standing at the end. They are just about having fun in an all-out chaos bout, which is exactly what I did there. So yes, this version of SQUEAK has done very well. I think it needs some minor changes, including probably actually adding this foot to the 3D print itself so that I don't have to glue it back in. Or if not that, adding some like little stabilizers so that I can, glue something in there easier, maybe. I don't know, I'll have to think on that. before I get a new version of the chassis. But all in all, I am very, very happy with how SQUEAK has gone. I really, really enjoy fighting this robot. Like I said, there'll be some minor improvements and updates to it in the near future, but that is all I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next video.